Alright guys, I'm going to do my picks for UFC 166, and if you ever wonder if the UFC is running way too many shows, this is one of the biggest cards of the year, and I had no idea it was coming up this weekend. I thought it was going to be until later on in the month. So, yeah, just kind of a heads up guys, Azufa. You're doing a lot of shows, and market penetration is not what it used to be. Alright, main event, UFC Heavyweight Championship match, Cain Velasquez defending champion against Junior Dos Santos. It's the rubber match. Obviously, Dos Santos won the first fight. Velasquez definitely won the second fight. And here we are, seeing him go down for a third time. And when you look at the two fights I've already had, they had very different outcomes. In fact, you probably couldn't get any more different outcomes than what you had in those two fights. The first fight, obviously, Junior Dos Santos goes in and basically drops Velasquez a one hit. Fight's over in 2 minutes. And then the follow-up match, Velasquez just dominates Dos Santos from bell to bell and just grounds and pounds him out for 25 minutes straight. So these are pretty much the bookends of fighting because you had completely antithetical outcomes in each bout. So going into this third one, you got to think, is it going to be more like the first fight or the second fight? And here's the thing, that second fight made me a believer in Velasquez. He absolutely just dominated Dos Santos for 25 minutes straight. There wasn't really a moment in that fight where it looked like Dos Santos even had a shot. And to be honest, Velasquez came very, very close to finishing him off quite a few times early in the first and second. So when I look back on that match and then I look back at their first match, the more I started to kind of think that the first match was a complete and utter fluke. Every now and then a fighter gets a really lucky hit, and I think Dos Santos got a really, really lucky hit in that first fight against Velasquez. And I think that if they would have fought that fight 10 times in a row, I think Velasquez probably would have won in a similar fashion to how he dismantled Dos Santos in the second fight, probably 9 times out of 10. So going into this fight, I think it's going to be a lot like the second fight. Probably not going to be as dominant a performance by Velasquez as it was the first time around. I think it's going to be very competitive for a while anyway. It's one of those weird things where with heavyweight fights, it's usually the first 1 or 2 rounds where there's complete dominance, and then as the fight goes on, it becomes a little bit more contested, right? Which is weird because other divisions, it's first round even, second round, third round, championship rounds, and it gets very one-sided. Well, I think Velasquez is going to come out, he's going to dominate Dos Santos for probably the first 2 rounds. His wrestling is way better, and he's one of the few fighters, I think, in the modern mixed martial arts which actually has truly deadly ground and pound. That's pretty much his game plan, is to take Dos Santos down and just unload on him once he has him on the mat. And I think he's going to do a very good job of neutralizing Santos and getting him down. I don't think Dos Santos can really defend the takedown all that well. And Velasquez, I think, is going to dominate for the first 2 rounds. I think things are going to get a little bit more competitive. Velasquez, his big Achilles heel is his gas tank. We've seen his cardio probably isn't the best in the world. So I think Dos Santos may make the third fight kind of an even kill. And he may outpoint Velasquez in round 4 and 5. So I'm totally seeing the possibility of this being sort of a John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson thing, where it's really, really dangerously close, but one fighter clearly had the more dangerous shots landing throughout the fight. With that in mind, I think Velasquez, it's really hard to pick against him after what he did in that second fight. Dos Santos, he really impressed me in his follow-up fights, but I just don't think he's really versatile enough as a fighter. I mean, he's a great boxer, he's got really good striking, but that takedown defense is just horrendous. And I think Cain's really going to have no problem taking him down at will in this fight. I think that's a huge X factor. And I think it's going to be a lot closer than the second fight, but at the end of the day, I think Velasquez will end up winning this one by unanimous decision. And he'll defend he'll keep the belt. Co-main event, Daniel Cormier against Roy Nelson. This could be a really, really surprisingly entertaining fight or a really awful one. I'm kind of leaning towards more being awful. Both these guys clearly not the most athletic fighters in the world. Nelson's put on some pretty exciting fights in the past, but he's coming off that loss to, oh goodness, I totally forgot the guy's name. Crap. Stipe Miocic. And Cormier obviously came off that really boring anti-fight of the night against Frank Mir. So what I think happens in this fight, I think Cormier, he's got a pretty solid strategy. Roy Nelson, he can hit a dude hard, but it's kind of hard to hit a dude when you're backed up against the cage and just being bear hugged the entire time. And I think Cormier, he's kind of what I would call a stand and pray fighter. Like he just kind of smothers the guy up top, neutralizes their striking, pops him a couple of times. If he has to go for a takedown, he'll go for a takedown. Not really going to be an exciting fight in the slightest. I don't see a knockout or a submission going on here. And I think Cormier ends up winning an absolute snoozer here, unanimous decision. And whether or not he drops to light heavyweight, we'll just have to wait and see. But it could be interesting, if Junior Dos Santos wins. Does Cormier get the next title shot? Because Junior said he won't fight Kane, but whatever. Gilbert Melendez against Diego Sanchez, also in the main event, which should be probably the fight of the night. If this is an interesting fight, I'll probably eat my own hat. Melendez, obviously, he come off that loss against Benson Henderson. Sanchez always putting on entertaining shows. Sanchez is pretty hard to finish. Melendez is just a straight up bad dude. I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit more technical than some people may imagine it to be. I think Melendez is just kind of outstrike Sanchez. Is going to be a little bit more technical, a bit smarter with his striking, more surgical. So at the end of the day, I think Melendez ends up winning this one rather easily, another unanimous decision. Gabriel Gonzaga versus Sean Jordan. This fight's going to suck. I think it's going to be over in like 2 minutes. Gonzaga, he's been knocked out a ton of times. And Sean Jordan, he's kind of not really a world-class heavyweight in any regard. But I think Gonzaga, he's probably got a little bit more cage history. Striking, I think, is a little bit better. He's definitely more versatile as a fighter. I think Gonzaga goes in, he gets a really solid punch, and this fight's over in first round, 2 minutes. Either KO or TKO for Gonzaga. John Dodson against Daryl Montague. Should be pretty fast-paced, but I'm not really a huge fan of flyweights, but we already know that. Dodson, he's looked impressive before. Montague, haven't really seen a lot from him. Really can't do an apples to oranges comparison here, but I'm going to go with Dodson because I liked what I saw in that fight against Demetrius Johnson. So there you go. I think he wins 3-round unanimous decision. So if you like decisions, you're really going to enjoy this show, so it appears. I'm just going to run down the rest of the shows in the card. Tim Bosch against CB Dalloway. I'm going to go with Dalloway with the upset. Welterweight matchup, Nate Marquardt against Hector Lombard. I think, both these guys really need a win in the worst way possible. I'm going to go with Lombard by KO, second round. Sarah Kaufman against Jessica Eye. I'm going to go with Kaufman, first round stoppage. Let's go with TKO. George Soteropoulos against KJ Noons in what should be a pretty entertaining fight. I'm going to give KJ Noons a late third round TKO victory in that one. The YouTube show fights TJ Waldberger against Adlan Almagov. I'm going to go with Waldberger. I'm going to take Tony Ferguson over Mike Rio. I'm going to go with Jeremy Larson over Andre Philly. And I think I'm going to go with Dustin Peg over Kyojo Horiguchi. So there you go. Probably not one of the best shows the UFC's ever put on, but it's got some potential for some surprises, and it's a good heavyweight bash. Really can't say anything negative about that, can you? Alright, well there you go. Those are my picks. See you at the cage.